We have a whole bunch of questions that have popped up in our chat. So I'd like to go ahead now and start our question and answer session because I think there's some really interesting questions that we can explore. So let me take a look here. And I think one that we could start out with is related to supports for multilingual learners. And any programs that you know of that are developing multilingual support and materials for students and families who speak languages other than English. Essentially, how to do this for diverse linguistic populations.
I think quickly, I shared a few resources in the chat that we often send out to our schools. We have a lot of different community-based organizations also who step in and support here in different ways. Looking at the layers of the system in our district office, right? We have our Office of Family and Community Engagement. We have our Office of Multilingual and Multicultural Education, making sure we're coordinating with those folks. Like, who do we need to train? Who do we want to bring into the conversation? For example, our family liaisons. We've done trainings for our family liaisons to make sure that they are equipped with the knowledge and ability to have these conversations with students and families. Often they bring different linguistic skills into the spaces that they are in. And so thinking about some of those other levers we have access to. At the logistical level, we provide, so Naviance translates into something like over 60 languages. And so anything that's put into that platform is able to be translated. We are also able to translate all of our documents and resources at minimum into the 9 major BPS languages. And so sometimes there are different resources for translation. And if you can create the core set of resources already translated, you've removed a ton of barriers up front. And so I'm just able to send those out to school teams and they have access to those quickly.
Thank you, Erin. Any perspectives on that from the state level?
I think Erin touched on the fact that in Massachusetts, we have a new IEP process. And so we are working with our special ed unit, the Office of Special Ed, and trying to make those connections. And we want to be creating documents. We don't have them yet, but our goal is to have guidance documents for special education for our multilingual learners, at least those 2 major populations to get started. And just guidance for schools on what do they need to adapt? How does the scope and sequence need to look a little different? The learning objectives that we use as the base for our scope and sequence should remain the same no matter the population. But what will need to happen is, what are those activities that we need to do? Who do we have to involve? What's that going to look like? And what will be that documentation at the end that will go into that e-portfolio to demonstrate achievement of those learning objectives? So when those scope and sequences are created, the ideal is that they will be available and important for every student, for all students. And then it will just be making adjustments for the different populations. So we are in process of trying to create some guidance documents for that.
So in Kansas,
thank you, Lisa.
Excuse
me.
Go
ahead, Natalie.
Doing 2 different things. We've been having monthly webinars, and similar to what Lisa said, we've invited our specialists for our special populations to share evidence-based strategies. And part of our Perkins applications, it's an opportunity gap analysis, looking at where their gaps are and providing evidence-based strategies for them to review as part of their application process.
That's something, John, we talked earlier about the rubric that REL helped design for EAF when we look at what defines a high quality material and assessment. And so that is a feature and a component of that rubric does it address the multilingual language needs of the campuses and districts? So having those conversations start at the campus level in terms of how they're serving their students.
Great. And Erin, just to reiterate, I think your comments reinforce that the extent to which at a district level, the partnerships are already there of individuals and departments that are working with these populations. And you called it out earlier about being relational and relational centered.
Yeah, absolutely. And to uplift what I put in the chat, you know, we think about sometimes a barrier that is presented at the school-based level is time. You know, if ESL teachers are pulling students and they are facilitating separate conversations and lessons, then what needs to be true? Then what can I coordinate at the district level or at the school level to make sure that MyCap is still taking place in those settings?
Yeah. All right, let's pull on another question here. Someone's curious, do you have any examples of schools that you would say have nailed implementation excellence of the kind of implementation practices that Scott was speaking to in his introduction?
Can that be a yes or no question?
It can be if you don't want to put a particular district on in the spotlight. But I think someone's really wanting to know, do they exist? You know,
They do exist, and they do exist. I think in so many variations, because in Massachusetts, it's a little hard for us to even be collecting that result of everybody because MyCap is not it's not mandated statewide. So schools are at various points in their creativity, in their development. I mean, clearly you're hearing from, you know, our star district, Boston Public Schools, who have multiple schools working on this and have done many presentations for us, for other schools to hear those kinds of stories. And I would say, you know, I could call out some schools. The ones that began, our first training programs began in 2018-19. So we have many, many districts that began then and have just continually refined their processes and now are having really great post-secondary outcomes for themselves. I think nobody knows these districts, so I think to name a group would be a little bit silly and time consuming.
Well, and you've made the point though, Lisa, that they do exist. From your perspective, you're seeing real examples of success and excellence.
Yeah,
and I see head nodding across the board.
Yeah, and because they're different kinds of schools. We have some regional CTE schools who have done really well in implementing MyCap in their schools. And then we have what's called comprehensive high schools, which are traditional, but also have technical education happening there as well. So they've done there are a couple of them that have done a good job with that. And then we just have our traditional high schools. So at every level, at every kind of school, there are success stories, but there are far more that is still pushing to get this to a point that they are really, really happy with it themselves.
So in Kansas, we have the Kansans Can Individual Plan of Study Star Recognition Program. So districts can apply and narrate what they're doing and provide artifacts. And then they're recognized at our Kansas State Department of Education annual conference. And schools are invited in to share with our State Board of Education what they're doing. And I reiterate, yes, we have lots of stars.
Same. I can only truly speak to the districts that we have like implementing EAF. I know there's a lot of districts across Texas doing great work, but we have 13 districts, I believe, that are in year 3 of implementation doing some really, really powerful things in their districts.
Oh, that's great.
I could also run down a list of schools. And so I would just say, I'm happy to put folks in touch with schools if they want to talk to people to get specific examples. I have elementary schools, K to 6s, K to 8s. Lisa mentioned comprehensive high schools. We have 6 to 12s, 9 to 12s, alt ed settings, K to 12s. Like I can just run through the school types and give you one for each of those categories. But I will share, we just launched a video series highlighting 3 of our schools in-depth case studies, and then 5 total schools with educator perspectives and student perspectives. And so that should give folks, I think, kind of a full scope of a bunch of our schools in BPS who are doing really incredible work.
Right, wonderful, Erin. I see you posted that in the chat. Thank you so much. Someone asked, are you doing promotion on any career options based on national, state, or district labor needs? And why or why not?
So I put some links in the chat that our Department of Labor prepares for us. I put a link to their website. They do posters. So anything that's on the poster is high demand and it's noted with high wage based upon education. They also do today's occupation in an Excel spreadsheet. So I did put a few things in the chat.
Thank you, Natalie.
That's something it may be a little different in EAF because we're looking at a number of districts, but something they do within their examination is looking at labor market needs and how they align to the programs of study that they are offering on their campuses and making sure that there's alignment there in the need and just gaining the understanding and awareness of the labor market.
And
We have time for one more question here, but let me let you jump in first there, Lisa.
I'll put a link in the chat shortly, but there, we also have what we call our workforce blueprints, and we're divided into, I think it's 7 regions across the state. So everything about workforce is in there. What are the declining jobs? What are the increasing jobs? What's the median wage? What kind of education do you need? In all of that. And that's a big piece also when we talk about our MyCap workshops, like make sure your students know what this is, because it's important labor market information that gets shared out.
Great. So we have just less than 2 minutes or so here. Do you have any advice for researchers and advocates in content areas who want to impact advising systems?
So REL Central has been helping us in Kansas, and I'll put some links in the chat. We looked at goal setting and the impact that it has and some evidence-based strategies, as well as electronic portfolios and evidence-based strategies.
Erin, Lisa, or Brandi, anything you'd like to see researchers or advocates exploring in terms of career advising?
Unfortunately, I feel like you need to think about that for a minute. I mean, I think any kind of, if any of the researchers are working in specific areas, I mean, geographically, then, reach out to either the state agency or, if you're including Boston, reach out to Erin, but reach out to any of us state leaders and ask, is there a connection that can be made? How can they help do that? We would welcome, support in that way as well.
I think that's something we're actually working on with REL is defining these grade level expectations for career development. So looking at it more at the development exploration level in terms of what does research show us our best practices, right? How do we even go about designing some sort of like a scope and sequence like Scott references? So I would say, yeah, that we're working on that as well, asking those same questions.
Prior to joining BPS, I was working with Scott out of the Center for Future Readiness, doing research around individualized learning plans. And I think one of the things that I would say, both from the teacher, well, I guess from the teacher perspective, from the researcher perspective, and then now being in such a large district is the willingness to engage in the mess and listen first, offer solutions second. I think often, it's more complicated than you think it is. And it's just very, very different state to state, district to district. I mean, we are often engaging with partners where they tell us, well, I've never seen that request before, or I've never seen that process before. That's new. And so the willingness to engage in that mess and kind of get into it and think more carefully about what is possible in these different settings and different spaces and be in it to get through those different steps so we can actually implement some really cool work.
Wonderful. Well, at this point, we'd like to hear what you all thought, our audience members. We'd like to ask you to make sure you complete our feedback survey before the end of the webinar. You can see the QR code here. You can access it via the code or via the link in the chat box. Please take a moment to complete it. We'll also receive it via email if you run out of time today. We value your feedback. Would like to know if this event was valuable to you and how we can improve our future offerings. I really want to say a heartfelt thank you to our speakers and our panelists today for engaging in a thought-provoking set of presentations and discussion. Thank you all to all of you who attended. We hope you found the presentations worthwhile and relevant for the great work you were doing to support our children and youth. Plenty of thanks in the chat too about the resources that have been shared from our presenters, and we're very grateful for that. Again, we've put the link to the feedback survey in the chat box. Appreciate you taking a moment to complete that. We'd also encourage you to check out what's new on the REL Southwest at our website. You can see it referenced here. Our website has overviews of our studies, our infographics, videos, and published reports. You can also learn more about REL Southwest and REL programs by visiting our website, subscribing to our X feed, and signing up to our newsletters and any other publications. We really appreciate your feedback today. Thank you again for joining the webinar. Thank you again to our panelists, and we wish you a great rest of your day.